Okay. So when you were at Parker, what transpired as you were finishing that led you to where you are right now?
So my experience at Parker was quite different. I got pregnant probably halfway through. I think it was try five, and I was already stressed with the rigorous program that it was. So I was in denial when I first entered chiropractic school. I thought, it would be a lot easier. I never had to study in high school. I never had to study in undergrad. But once I got this rigorous schedule, being on a trimester with 23 hours and all these labs, I did not know how to study. And so that was challenging to me because I was able to retain, a certain amount of information, but then you get burned out. And I ended up, being pregnant halfway through, and I was already stressed out with the program. So I decided to take a year off. And that was the best thing because I didn't want to be stressed during pregnancy. I already knew, how much that affects, how you are when you carry a child, how much that affects, the future of that individual. And I just wasn't going to do it to myself. I wasn't going to do it to my unborn child. And so I took a semester off, which was the best thing. And then when I came back, I was so on fire and so ready for everything that, it just helped my own personal experience with the program and also shaped more how I wanted to practice. So I had just to backtrack on going before I finished. When I entered chiropractic school, I kind of had a vision laid out of what my practice was going to look like. I was one of those students that, I sought out mentors early. And a lot of my mentors, there's one, Dr. Wadis Williams, who practices in San Dimas, California. And he was really big on not just going to Parker seminars and the jewels that you get from that, but he read a lot of self-help books. So Think and Grow Rich, The Millionaire Next Door, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so I really, started honing in and started looking at the vision piece of planning and seeing it is how you can actually manifest things. So I actually still have my first copy of Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And in that copy, and I was in probably try two when I actually went out and wrote what my vision for my practice was. And today it's almost where, going back and reading that, it's almost where, I wanted it to be. So I definitely think that my experience was a little bit different when I graduated because I took that time off. I actually graduated and was behind in boards. And my partner at the time was, in LA. So I went to LA after graduation and I ended up working in a couple of practices as an associate. And that's not what I planned. I thought I would graduate initially and just start working, but with, getting pregnant while I was in school, that changed a little bit, but I wouldn't do anything differently. I think everything helped shape who I am. But one of the practices that I associated in while I was in California, Dr. Elliot Berlin has a exclusive prenatal and pre and postnatal practice. I helped develop his pediatric program. And the other chiropractor that I worked with was Dr. Dion McLean with McLean Sports and Wellness. And she was a sports chiropractor. So she was a hurdlist for USC. And, a lot of her patients, were athletes. So I got to see the best of both worlds. Dr. Berlin's practice is integrated without the medical aspect of it. So he had the chiropractic, he had the acupuncturist. His wife is a Psych D, so they're doing mental health support. And I just loved how everything, work together. The only component, so it was an idea practice for me who came out of school and wanting to be in an environment like that. The only thing that was missing for me was a medical component. And so I think those two things really helped me not only gain the experience, I learned a lot on the business side from being in it, but as a student at Parker, I was working actively part-time in practices of some of my colleagues that I had started with in the program who opened up their practices. So I learned a lot of real life lessons while I was still a student or without making that financial commitment, for myself. So I learned a lot of what I like to do, what I didn't like about practice, the setups, and so I think it gave me a better opportunity. And at one point, I was even managing one of those practices. So a pretty interesting experience for me.